Great. Good evening, namaste, and welcome to today's session, Organization Development from an Indic Perspective. I am Rohit Shenoy, an OD professional, and I will be hosting today's session. We are very pleased to have with us Raghu Anantnarayanan today. Raghu was born in Mumbai, went on to IIT Chennai, and then worked in two broad streams of work. He's associated with Sumedas Academy of Human Context as a co-founder. To me, in my mind, it's ISABS from an Indian perspective. From there, he worked with lots of corporates, NGOs in organization and leadership development. In parallel, he also learned yoga, and that too directly from Yogacharya Krishnamacharya for about 10 years. And as some of you might know, Yogacharya is the guru of lots of well-known yoga teachers in India and abroad. So Raghu therefore brings in a unique perspective of understanding of human behavior and Indic wisdom. And this helped in bringing various perspectives to OD challenges. He has authored several books, including the Tensegrity Mandala and Leadership Dharma. Incidentally, I'm reading the Leadership Dharma right now. I just did my Pandava Mandala and I'm reading that book. Extremely interesting. With Raghu, we also have Vivek today, Vivek Tikpati. Vivek is the CEO of Quinergy, which is a leadership development and organization development firm, which is rooted in Indic perspectives. Some of Vivek's earlier roles were the head of HR for the TVS group. We don't have Ganesh here, Ganesh Chidambara Krishnan, but he played an integral part in setting up today's session. So without any ado, I hand over to Vivek to take over the session.
Thank you so much, Rohit. Just one correction, head of HR for just TVS Motor. TVS Group is about 100 odd companies. Yeah, that's a huge thing. But it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And for me, it's another opportunity to have this conversation with Raghu. I've done multiple conversations. I'm very excited with one more opportunity to do this. Before we start, a little bit about Quinergy. Rohit touched about it very briefly. So, the title for today is OD from an Indic lens, and that's fundamentally what we do as an organization. So we do leadership development, training, organization consulting, keeping fundamentally the Indic lens. So a lot of our work is based on the Mahabharata and the Yoga Sutras. That's fundamentally what we do. And like I said, I'm very happy to be here. Really looking forward to this conversation. I think at the outset, we should congratulate Rohit for a phenomenal job of getting everybody together. I've seen the energy in the group. There's a WhatsApp group. It's amazing and how everything has come together, right? So fantastic job, Rohit, and great. So I think broadly the structure that we have in mind is, Raghu and me, both of us are a little uncomfortable this one-to-many kind of format. We don't sit here to say, we know all the answers, and we're all here basically to have a dialogue, to have a conversation. And we really hope that this conversation will evoke a few things within all of us, and all of us can participate in this dialogue and have a conversation about what it is. So we probably start with a brief conversation. Raghu and me will chat for some time, and then we'll open it up for questions. We have the option of going into breakout rooms, having a conversation and coming back. So we'll take it as it comes. And that's a broad thinking. Right? So Raghu, here we are again.
Hi. I'm getting used to meeting people over the web and things like that. Yeah.
I know. And
very comfortable sitting at home and chatting away.
Yeah. And it's always great because every forum, there's always somebody who's been touched by Raghu and the work he's done. So it's always something which is, enlivening for all of us. Raghu, I think it's a good place to start with to talk about the topic, Raghu, and what in your mind is organization development? This whole thing that's going around. What in your mind is development?
Let's just look at the word development first. Because I think it's a very important word to look at, especially given the topic of Indian OD and things like that. Yeah. Development has been defined today in ways that I don't think implies real development, right? It's defined in very Western frameworks. And I don't think development happens unless there is a yearning within for me to express something which is my dream, for me to move towards my aspiration. Yeah. And what has happened, if you look at any colonized country, I'm not talking only about India, right? Is that the characteristic of a colonized mind is one which is in envy of the colonizer and in shame of itself. Okay, there's a very important writer called Peter Du Preez in South Africa who's talked about it. Ashish Nandi has talked about it. Frantz Fanon has talked about it. W.E. Du Bois. There are many people who've spoken about it. And you just have to look around to see how prevalent it is. Yeah, because the other day, I mean, about 6-8 months back, I was talking to a group of young people. Their number one idea is, I have to go to the US, or I have to do something like the US or something like this, which is very strange, because if you look at what's happening in the US, and you know, if anybody in this group has gone through things like Story of Stuff and you know, things like this, it's very clear what is happening with this idea of development, which is a very colonizing idea of development. Right? So the idea of development has to be questioned both at a personal level and at an organizational level and at a national level. Right? The word development also means there's something intrinsic in me that is getting unfolded, that is getting opened up. Right? So if I am sitting in envy, if I'm sitting with any kind of negative self-worth, how can there be development? There can only be imitation. There can only be acting on what is required for and what is being consumed by the person I'm envious of, the country I'm envious of, the idea of development I'm envious of. Right? So this, I think, is a very critical question to ask and to answer. Yeah, because I think a lot of issues that we are facing in India is because we have not defined development in Indian ways. Just see what's happened to Bhutan. Huh? Bhutan is a fantastic country because it redefined development. It said GDP is not an idea of development. It redefined development. You take Arvind Eye Clinic. You take many of these organizations which have a heart. They've all redefined the idea of development on their own terms. They have not given in to other, you know, outside measures of what is development and what is success. They have acted on their sense of worth. They have acted on their sense of aspiration and moved towards it. And there are big organizations that have done it. I mean, Tatas have done it, right? Reliance has done it. It's got its own model of working. It doesn't imitate anybody. Yeah, I think this is a very critical thing because most of OD today is imitating Western ideas of organization. Right? And the strange thing is more and more they're taking from the East. Yeah, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but some of the latest things that people talk about, like CBT, for example, yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's still in its early days. So the originators of it, the people who started it, talk about their indebtedness to Dalai Lama, to the Buddhist idea of man and compassion and so on. Dialectical behavioral therapy. That's even younger. So it's even more directly referring to its antecedents in the Buddhist ways, right? Daniel Goleman studied with Dalai Lama for years, right? His first books were all co-written. I mean, he co-authored with Dalai Lama, right? And Carl Jung, I mean, the latest thing that's come out recently is the Red Book. And anybody who's interested in psychology and development has to read that book. that's full of references to the Upanishads and various things like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's very important for us to look at what development means in our own terms, and not be afraid of looking at it from there.
Sure.
Now, if we do that, I think we can do fantastic things.
Sure.
Right? And that's what is being talked about. Now, J.V. Singh and company have written a book now about what is India.
Yeah.
So they are talking about Jugaad. Now, what is Jugaad? Yeah, Jugaad is just, every guy in India has a certain street
Intrinsic
smart,
creativity.
Street smart about him, ingenuity about him. Right? Now, your roadside dukans are actually entrepreneurship.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we really have to understand this word.
Sure.
I'm just reminded of one more conversation I had recently with this person who was the head of HR in Oberoi. Yeah, he was asking me, what you're supposed to be in, OD and behavior. How do I get this dosa maker from Sharavana Bhavan to come and make dosa for us, because we're not able to make dosa like him. I'm offering him 10 times the salary that he gets in Sharavana Bhavan. He won't come here.
Yeah.
Right? So I told him what Sharavana Bhavan does. Sharavana Bhavan doesn't pay him that much as a salary, but it looks after his family, looks after his children's education, right? Any issue, any problem this guy has is completely looked after by that system.
Absolutely.
So why will he leave that system and come to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
right?
it's not
and Sharavana
monetary
Bhavan has
alone.
grown, it's grown all over the world. So that's a great model. Arvind Eye Clinic is a great model. There's so many beautiful models in India, which we need to learn from. Nah? So I think this is very critical. Am I coming from envy? Am I coming from imitation? Or am I coming from a deep respect for myself? And am I coming from aspirations of my own? If I locate on that, development can happen. If I don't locate on that, development cannot happen.
Super. So what you're saying, Raghu, is that so far we've been following a very Western model of what development means, and often it is being measured by a benchmark which is set by somebody else, and it is not a model which brings out the best in us. And when the best in us actually comes out, and you see the success stories of everywhere, when organizations think for themselves, when countries think for themselves, like Bhutan, they have a happiness index. They don't have a GDP index. That's what you're talking about. And the classic case of Sharavana Bhavan. Yeah, beautiful. So what is, if I have to contrast this, Raghu, you spoke about the colonized self, right? As if I contrast this in, so to speak, of a decolonized self, what does it mean?
See, it means 2-3 things, na? Since I love Mahabharata, let me go to the Mahabharata. Right? Now, there is, I don't know if you've been watching the way Mahabharata characters have been drawn. And the latest set of things that's coming up is something called the 18 Days, which is done by somebody who's out of Marvel Comics. Right? The portrayal of the hero is more and more and more like some Western superhero. Okay? So, and this is not a trivial thing. The idea of heroism in a person is a very critical thing, because aspirations are from there, behavior is learned from there. So many things come out of an aspirational hero, right? Now we have 2 issues to deal with. There is one Bollywood stereotype, right? And then there is this superhero stereotype. So if we have to understand colonization, what's a colonized mind, you have to look at these 2 models. Okay? And neither of these pictures will come to your mind if you simply close your eyes and listen to your grandmother telling you the story of Mahabharata. Okay? If you listen to your grandmother's story, and most grandmothers who tell stories tell it beautifully, right? They'll be evoked. So they'll be bringing human energy. It touches what I'm calling your archetypal idea of a hero. Okay. And it's very important that we allow these archetypal energies in us to be touched. Because when we don't do that, we interpret things through stereotypes, stereotypes of thought, stereotypes of feelings, stereotypes of aspirations, and all of this. Now, if I'm acting from stereotypes, okay, I'm a colonized mind, right? Today, we have to get out of both the Hollywood and the Bollywood stereotypes. So people in India have a problem. People in any colonized country have a problem. They have to wipe out two kinds of conditioning in their mind. Yeah, people in America only have to wipe out Marvel comics. Yeah, we also have to deal with Bollywood. Yeah, you get the idea, na? So anytime my thinking is not born out of my swatantrata, my independence, my aspirations, my swabhava, I cannot grow. I can only distort myself. Yeah, which is why, you know, quite often when I'm doing coaching and things like that, I meet people 40, 45, they've got this, they've got that, they've got their 2 bungalows and cars. But they're feeling hollow within because their own intrinsic worth, their own intrinsic self, they have not invested in.
Ah.
Right? And organizations that can, you know, the new word now is pivot, right? Yeah, the more corona, the more you have to pivot. How can an organization pivot when everybody in the organization is authentic, is full of energy, is full of jugaad?
Okay.
Now, if I'm trying to imitate somebody else, and if I think that management is to be like somebody else, how will I respond with alacrity, with speed, with intent from my intelligence? And that's all I've got, damn it.
Yeah,
that's all I've got. I can have computers, I can have any goddamn thing, but ultimately, what do I have to deal with any crisis? My human energy, my intelligence. And if I'm holding this intelligence in envy, and I want to be like somebody else, if I'm holding myself in negative regard, how will I respond to challenge? I'll constantly be waiting for some other guy from somewhere to respond and then try to imitate him, right? Now just imagine, Yash, Sehwag trying to imitate Gavaskar and Gavaskar trying to imitate Sehwag because they are envious of each other's record. Yeah?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that you keep saying is the only creative element in an organization is the human being.
Yeah, absolutely. And, absolutely.
Right.
Everything else is dead.
Yeah. And if you're not able to get the best out of them, where is the organization, like you said, the agility, the ability to respond to what's happening around is going to come from?
Power. Where will power come from? Human mind and human power comes only from this. Just look at every organization that has done well in the last few years here in India. They've not followed some foreign model. Nah?
Right.
I actually did a lot of work in Tirupur. That little place is about 3,000 to 5,000 crores turnover. Right? I haven't gone to Ludhiana and places like this, but there are a number of these little places around. I studied that place for about 3-4 months. It's incredible what happens there. You have these small units,
right?
Like, you know, like a cottage industry type of a thing. One fellow will do only kaja button, which means he's only stitching that button thing in your shirt.
Right.
Somebody else is only making collars. Right. So they've got a cluster of people like this. Right. There's one guy with a you know, a single small room where he's taking orders from some guy in Italy. Right. And this guy with his little conglomerate is extremely agile. If somebody wants a certain kind of button, certain kind of collar, whatever, he knows whom to go to, who's the expert.
Right.
What happens is this guy grows to, let's say, 100 crore turnover, right? Then he gets it into his head that he has to set up a company like an Italian company or a Japanese company. Because those guys also come and sell it to him. Nah?
Yeah.
So he tries to set up his own factory and goes down the drain.
And he loses in touch with everything that has brought him there.
Right. He's forgotten all the energy, the thinking ability, the jugaad, and the extreme high quality little places where they work. Now the Shivakashi works like this.
Right.
Every successful Indian organization works because they respect the craft capability of India, including your IT.
Absolutely.
IT is just crafts. A big, large IT group is about 25 people team. If it's 50 people team, it's very large.
Right.
That's the size of a craft group, man. We are amazing at that.
Absolutely.
We ought to invest in that, no?
Absolutely. Yeah. There was a chat which spoke about the Dabbawalas in Mumbai as another example of.
That's become famous because Harvard wrote about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There is a drilling company in, I don't remember the name of the village, a drought-prone part of India. They bought machines from the US or something like that, broke it down, remade it. There is not one deep drilling thing that happens in India that's
without them.
Yeah, without their machines.
Yeah.
Phenomenal industry.
Phenomenal. Absolutely. And it's a family business.
Right. And there's another very famous thing in Coimbatore, na? This, God, I'm forgetting the name of this. Yeah, it's an eatery. He's Annapurna. Right? The boss of Annapurna still goes around in a veshti and a jibba, whatever. Right. He's gone all over the world. He has not really learned English, but he knows the latest in his technology and his business. Right? Ludhiana and Hero Cycles makes an incredible amount of money.
Absolutely.
Right? Thank God they haven't tried to organize themselves too much. The moment they do, they'll go down the drain.
I know. And Raghu, the irony is that we have such amazing case studies here, such amazing examples here, and we still refer often to Western-related case studies in a lot of our managed education.
I know. And like Dabbawalas, no?
Yeah,
you wouldn't be talking about Dabbawalas if HBR didn't write about it. Isn't that ridiculous?
Absolutely. Wonderful. I'm going to ask you some more on the Mahabharata, Raghu, and I think that's one thing that I think we should explore. So it'd be good if you can take us through what you spoke about the archetypal energies and each of them. I think that's something that will be great for us to listen to.
Okay. Yeah, let's go back to this Marvel comics and all that, no? See, it's important to recognize that the Western idea of heroism is the Rambo idea of heroism. Tarzan, Rambo, all these superheroes. Yeah, people who are standing there alone, James Bond, right? These kind of characters who use power, create what they call, what is it called? Collateral damage. They'll go there, they'll throw a couple of bombs, all kinds of people will die. It doesn't matter. Just because this guy has got Dr. No, he can destroy the rest of the world. Yeah. And this also comes from a fundamental colonizing idea where you can take and you can extract from nature. And success is measured in how much you've extracted from nature and converted into your private property. Now, to understand this, you have to go back to England and how private property started and how the idea of husbanding resources started and how they defined wasteland and things like this. The problem is we are still defining wasteland in India exactly like it was defined in pre-independence times. Yeah. So when you have an idea of success, and if you have an idea of heroism and leadership, which is based on extractiveness, right? It's a no-brainer, man. We're not going to live past another 50 years,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's very obvious. From the 1970s, there have been studies, the Club of Rome and so many other studies, where the fact that we're exhausting our resources is very clear. Thank God for COVID. This is the only year in the last 10 years where we haven't used up resources in 4 months or 5 months, right? Without regenerating capability of the earth. So this year we will get by, but the GDP is going to be very low. So we're going to go nuts when the scene opens up. So you have to have a completely different idea of leadership, right? So they're starting to talk about it in the West. Yeah, they're talking about servant leadership, then they're talking about feminine ideas of leadership. But the Rambo idea, the Marvel Comics idea is very deeply embedded.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, the Mahabharata talks about 5 kinds of leadership. Right. So each Mahabharata hero is a different leadership type. Right. So you have Yudhishthira, who brings in order, who brings in structure, which is very important. So he knows how to rule a peace. When it is peacetime, he knows how to rule the place. Right. Then you have Bhima. Bhima is the warrior. Right. So you need him. You need him when you have to go into war. Right. And then any organizational reality, any role relationship, whatever, when you go into challenges, there will be hurts. There will be a human cost. So you need a Nakula, who's the healer, who will come there, who will help people to regenerate, who will invest in the infrastructure, right? Who's not going to demand anything, but simply be there for everybody, right? And you need a Sahadeva to innovate. So now, because innovation is coming up, then Sahadevas are also being recognized. And most important, you need the Arjuna type. Now, who is the Arjuna type? And the Arjuna type is the person who is going to ask very inconvenient questions. Yeah, you're all ready for war. And he says, wait a minute, man, we got to figure out whether we are fighting the right war or not. Right? And he is willing to go into the most important step in any development process. He is willing to enter into a Dharma Sankata. Right? So any of the listeners, if they've read Laying and Bateson and people like that, yeah, will know that psychological development takes place only when you hit a double bind in your mind, right? Which is Dharma Sankata. And then you find a deeper level of mind in which the double bind can be dissolved. That's the fundamental of development, right? Most nations have wiped out the Arjuna figure. Right? Most cultures have wiped out the Arjuna figure. So if you go back to Red Indian mythology, the trickster hero is the most important hero. Right? Like that, if you go back into more primitive mythologies, you'll find the Arjuna type of character. The only civilizational movement that has retained the importance of an Arjuna is India. Right? And it's extremely important, especially in the Indian context. Nah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I don't know if people have did you send them the link for the film, Vivek?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, I'm hoping some people have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, that's incredible because one, that whole work happened in a government organization. Right? Everything there happened because we asked them a question saying, what is your dharma? Is your dharma just to make money or is it something else? Right? So these government chaps who are used to rishwat and things like that come up with a statement saying my dharma here is to ensure water for the next generations.
Right.
Not to be a PWD engineer, but to ensure water for the future generations. Right? Now, this kind of sensibility and this kind of thinking is available in non-Western educated Indians.
Right.
I'll come back to that in a moment because I have a big kundak about this. Yeah?
Yeah.
So what do we do out there? We ask them to deal with all their dilemmas. We ask them to deal with their dharma sankatas. Right? And through the week, they deal with one after the other. And then come up with saying, this is my dharma, this is how I need to work because, yeah, this is my commitment to my society and so on.
Right.
And then they've done fantastic work. Right? The film that you saw is 10 years after the work was done on the ground. Okay? You know what broke the impetus of the work? A new political party came, right? Bribing left, right, and center. They wanted to create their own thing, right? In spite of that, in many places where the group came together, it survived, right? And what is critical about these groups? They are from all so-called communities and castes and things like that. They've come together and said, what is the dharma of my village?
Absolutely.
So can I set aside my personal issues? And these are not just personal, mind you. Some of them are historical issues. Okay, we've been there on the ground. We've worked with them. We know, right? They're willing to set it aside and say, what is the dharmic thing to do for the context?
Absolutely.
And the Kudam process that we use there is a very old Indian process. Yeah, every place I have gone to, whatever OD I have done, I have just recreated the Kudam.
Absolutely.
Right? Just getting people to say we are human, as human beings, what's the right thing to do? Yeah, कुछ OD नहीं चाहिए, body नहीं चाहिए, कुछ नहीं चाहिए भाई. ठीक है? दिल कहाँ है ये बताओ पहला. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And most people want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need some theory for that.
Sure. I have a question, Raghu, where somebody said, can you explain the Kudam a little more?
Sure. Kudam simply means a place to come together. Yeah. And we've been using this for a long time because what happened was, this must be at least 35 years ago. See, Suresh, Pradeep and I have been working together for a long time, right? We actually started working together for tribal development. Yeah. And if I have time, I think the story is very important. Yeah.
Sure.
So what did we do? I mean, Pradeep is the key person in this, but you know, Suresh and I have worked on it. Suresh more than me in the tribal context, but I worked in other contexts with them, right? So the fundamental issue of tribal people when you go to work with them is they actually feel like shit. They tell you that, no? They've been treated like this particular group near the Warli paintings that have been stolen and used without giving them proper IPR, right? That tribe. Yeah. When we went and started working with them, they were very clear. They said, we are treated like pigs and we think we are pigs. So when we went in and we respected them, they have a fantastic culture. They have beautiful ways of working together. Yeah. And so many beautiful things about their culture, their stories and all that are really evocative. Right? So when you sit and you listen to them, and you know, these people have a sixth sense or whatever. They're very, very sensitive people. So the moment you respect them, they know. Right? So once they said, you know, we are worthy of respect, we are worthy of being proud. The way they took charge of their lives was incredible. right? It isn't that everything that was going on there is great. They were getting drunk, all kinds of things were happening, but we never talked about any of the negatives. We went there and said, you people are human beings, you're worthy of respect. They sat back and said, if I'm worthy of respect, how should I behave? A lot of things shifted, right? So this capability is there in the Indian mind. Yeah, I'm hoping it's still not lost. Okay, I'll come back to why I'm a little worried about it. Yeah, so what happened was there was a education department, I think, in Tamil Nadu, which wanted to work on its entire process. So they approached us, Pradeep and Suresh took up the work. So we sat and brainstormed and said, how do you work with a government department? Yeah. So then we said, look, there is only one chance. There's an old Indian way of working, yeah, which is called the Kudam.
Right.
Now, how does the Kudam work? If you go to any traditional family, I don't know about North India, but in South India, like the Chettiar families and many of these traditional homes, you'll find a space in the center that's an open space, lots of rooms on either side. I think Havelis and other things are also built like that, right? Now, what happens in a Kudam is that whenever the family meets in the Kudam, all roles and role differences are set aside.
Right.
Okay, so they meet in the Kudam for celebration. They meet in the Kudam for very important deliberations. Okay, so the tradition, and they talk about this in the film. One of the people in the film talks about it, saying, oh, we used to run this Kudam and things like that. Yeah, somebody is putting up veranda. It's not veranda, man. It's the space inside the house. Okay, the veranda has a whole different connotation.
It's called
Angan.
It's a central hall.
The central hall, there is no, it's an open space usually, and the Tulasi Madam, either a Tulasi or something else is kept in there.
It's called Angan. Yeah.
So when you go into that space, you awaken your sacredness within. And no differences are observed when you go into that space. That's very important. So when an important decision has to be made, the Karta calls everybody in the family and says, this is the decision to be made. He doesn't make the decision, mind you. He said, this is an important decision to be made. Okay. Then there's a lot of consultation, consensus building that happens in the group. So maybe for a couple of weeks, maybe for a month, you know, everybody knows whose year they've got, how to talk to people, right? There's a network going on there, right? Everybody has a sense. Okay. So this guy will listen to me. This guy won't listen to me, whatever. All that is given space. All these differences are given space. And then when the consensus develops, 3 or 4 of the elders will sit together with the Karta and say, this is the consensus. Then with fanfare, the Karta will come and say, this is the decision. Okay. He's not made the decision, but when he said this is the decision, it means no more quibbling, right? So this is not Arjuna time anymore. This is not questioning time anymore. This is Yudhishthira time now. So everybody is fine, right? The best examples of Japanese management quote this about how decisions are taken in Japanese management. You worked in a company like that, so you have an idea.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But if it's done in India, it's not respected. God knows why. So we just recreated this process. Right. So we went into this government office. We did 2-3 days of, you know, fun and games like you see in that film to get them oriented towards something. And then we asked the question, what is it that is dharmic to do? And it worked like a charm. Right?
Especially in a setup which is so used to hierarchical models where power is the most important.
Yeah, but you know what, Vivek? Many of the people in the government department were first generation learners, first generation into work.
Wow.
So they remembered the old processes. They hadn't forgotten. So it is very easy to awaken it. And the IAS officer who was there was willing to give up power. It's a two-way process. I mean, if he had sat there and said, you guys are doing bullshit, nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
Right? He was willing to say, yeah, let me share power and this is something else. And it worked beautifully.
Absolutely.
So then we worked with the PWD, then we worked with the Agriculture Department. And the whole process is recorded in that film.
Sure.
Yeah. So if anybody is interested in knowing what it is, they should go through that film. And it is just tapping into the genius of the Indian mind, the compassion of the Indian mind. Yeah. The ability of the Indian mind to say us first and me later.
Sure.
Yeah. This is what every OD is trying to create. No.
Absolutely.
Ownership, commitment, ye wo. Baba, ye sab hai. Don't lose it and then try and introduce it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll tell you what the Kundak is. Huh?
Yeah.
When we made the film, Kailasam, who made the film for us, he's passed away, unfortunately, a close friend. We showed it in the engineering college in Chennai. So there was a big discussion on what is dharma. So the peon who was standing there and watching all this. Yeah, we guys, some of us have a way of, being friends with all of these kind of staff, no? So after this whole thing finished, this peon comes up and starts talking to Kailasam. He says, Inna sir, dharmangara varthikki ninga 5 nimisham pesringle. No? So he said, to explain the word dharma, you have to talk to these guys for 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Right? Inna Sima padipa padichirukanga. No? He says, you've studied Western stuff. And you have to explain to them what is dharma for 5 minutes, what is happening to our country. Yeah.
It's perfect example of the colonized.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because once you end up with, individuality, yeah, and monocultures, this is what will happen.
Absolutely. Rohit has a couple of questions, Raghu. But I have one question that I think, Rohit, just before that, it's one on the chat. I think I need to ask this question before I hand over to you. You just hold on for 1 minute. From Deepanshu. Deepanshu, if you can come alive and ask the question, it will be great.
Correct.
Hi, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Raghu, much appreciate your time to answer my question. This is regarding the example that you shared about Dabbawalas. And it actually, to the extent that it pains to see that Harvard has to call out Dabbawalas before even Indians take note of that. So what goes missing? Is it that Harvard has got a brand name, and I'm just sharing my hypothesis. Is it that Harvard has been able to build a brand name that people take note, and our IIMs or Symbiosis or Narasimha Monji couldn't do that? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, IIMs and all these people are quasi-Harvards, no?
True that.
Yeah, so let's be clear about that. I used to teach in IIM Ahmedabad for a long time, so I know where those guys are coming from. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And yet we are not able to get them to find...
It's simple. It's simple, Debanjan. I'm not able to see your face, so I don't know how.
You're not
Even
missing
if I put it on speaker.
You're not missing much, but maybe you can see it now.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Bright yellow.
Yeah. See, the issue is this, Deepanshu. It's a lack of respect for ourselves, fundamentally. Right? I mean, I don't know how many people who are listening know that the only civilization in the world which has had a continuity of breakthrough mathematical discoveries every 50 to 100 years till the 1700 is India. Yeah. And that is a phenomenal thing. If you understand the history of mathematics and the history of science, having a mathematical breakthrough, which is like, calculus and very funda things.
Sure.
Right. And Indian music is mathematics and mathematical series of a very high order. The reason why Western music is usually caught with 4x4 and 4x8 is that their math didn't go beyond that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
How many people know this?
And so my question is why? Why don't people know?
That's the big question, Dipanshu. That's the big question. Yeah. There are people trying to fight for saying, please include a history of Indian mathematics and science in our curriculum. It's being blocked. Because there's vested interest. The local science guy who's doing math is very scared that he will not be invited to whatever American institute if he says that there is Indian science and Indian math. Right? So recently, because there's one guy out there who's, probably going to get a Nobel Prize in math soon, talks about Hemachandra series. Suddenly everybody is looking at Hemachandra series. And Hemachandra series was quoted by Fibonacci. In his book, he says where his Fibonacci series comes from. He says it comes from Alcorium, someplace, and he says it is originally from India, Hemachandra, and he names the people. Why is this happening, Dipanshu? How many times have you, I'm going to ask you a personal question. How many times have you set aside your insight and covered it up with HBR and other things?
Not as educated, so I don't even quote HBR.
But you would have looked for some other justification, right? You know how many times I've seen this happening? Yeah, I've been in OD situations in organizations where there's a foreign consultant who comes and gives some idea. Okay. Then I'm called in because that thing is not working. Yeah, or Indira, me, some of us are called in.
Sure.
In this particular company, I worked there for a long time. So they had some foreign consultant. He gave some ideas. They're very good. Most of them are from IIM Ahmedabad and places like this. So when they screw up, they call us anyway. So they do an excellent quantity job. So they put all these numbers together, but they can't get the group to work. Yeah. So what happens? They call us in, and what do we see happening? We see extremely bright, brilliant Indian managers trying to bridge the gap between the Indian way in which they're managing the company and the Western way in which they have to present it. Yeah, this happens over and over and over again. What a waste of time and what a waste of intelligence.
It's painful.
Yeah?
It's painful, and that's why my question.
It's costly. It's very costly. Yeah, everybody knows here, sales in India happens through relationships. Reliance works on relationships. It will never break a relationship once it's established. It doesn't go on contract. How many times I've seen, a foreign consulting thing will come, McKinsey or somebody will come, they'll give something. Oh, if you do this, your sales will go up. If you do that, your sales will go up. And this guy, the guy who's looking after this 100 distributors is going nuts because if he breaks the chain of trust, okay, he's never going to establish it again. He's never going to be able to send things into the channel again, because every other sale will then have to be incentivized. Right? This whole idea of incentivization is contrary to organization development. Organizations develop through trust.
And it is primarily not just a Western, but a very American concept. So why is it that the Indian firms have today started following that without looking at the local wisdom?
They're nuts.
Okay, that answers my question.
No, Dipashu, it's just plain stupid, nah?
No, but I completely buy your statement.
There's a whole book called Trust. It talks about how costly business is when there's no trust. Right? And it talks about why Asian businesses succeed because there is trust. And it questions this model of core competencies and this and that. A bank doesn't give money to Tatas because they think Tatas has got core competency. They trust Tatas. Tatas will pay the money back. Right? Samsung, all these big names, the entire thing runs on trust and relationship building and so on. That's the Eastern way.
Absolutely.
So you just have to work with that Eastern way, nah?
Well, I think I've got the best answer that I've got from you was the shortest one, which was they're nuts. And
I think so, because it's very costly. This not building trust and not building this Nakula type of, that's what this servant leadership is all about.
Right.
And how many senior managers I meet who actually are Nakula types, who love their people, who support their people, and that's why people work for them. And then they'll have some study that says you don't have assertion, you don't have this, that, and the other. And they try to develop these things. Give me a break.
Sure. I won't take more of your time, but the last point that you made, if you can just comment on that, these managers that you speak about who are like Nakula,
yeah,
do you see them succeed in their careers?
They succeed, man. They succeed like crazy because they invest in relationships, they invest in trust, they invest in developing their people. And that's what Japanese management is all about. Huh? Ask Vivek. Japanese management is all about building trust
and
trusting your people and relationships and trusting your people. Kiritsus are not built on contracts.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rohit?
Yeah, great. So Raghu, this was a very a rich perspective, very illuminating one, and it pains that we are so nuts. So Raghu, when you look at this from an organization development perspective, how do we intervene in the system versus Western and versus Indian? What would change? And some examples would be great there. How would we approach it differently? What would outcomes be defined? All of that. What would we focus on and so on?
See, Rohit, I don't know whether it's my luck or what. Yeah. But wherever I've gone, yeah, I first do a study of the organization and tell them this is what I see, this is my assessment, this is whatever, and it's drawn from talking to the top management teams. We've developed a few very interesting questionnaires and profiling tools that help us to work with it, but we don't rely only on that. Then we have a dialogue. I have a dialogue with their top management team. Right? I'm not claiming to know the truth. I'm looking at it from the outside. You're looking at it from the inside. Let's put it together and see what comes up. Right? So certain patterns will come up. There are certain patterns of what can be said in this organization, how it is said, which is what is generally referred to as culture. If these boundaries are not changed, if the kind of conversations I can have with my fellow workmen, with my boss, with people reporting to me, if that doesn't change, culture doesn't change. Right? So I must have this ability to confront, I must have this security that I can raise difficult questions and it'll be taken seriously, for example. Right? So we look at what are the factors that keep it difficult, what can make it easier and so on, and work with that. Right? I've just had the luck that most people, I mean, I've only worked with 4 or 5 organizations for long periods of time. I've worked at the Murugappa Group for more than 10 years, different organizations, right? They've always given me space. I've always brought in Indian ideas, discussed many of the ideas with them, right? And we work things out together. I don't go there saying I know what to do. I have some ideas. Let's sit together, work with it, and see what emerges, right? It's not that I don't have any ideas, right? But coming from the outside, you can't just plonk an idea and say, oh, this is how it is done in Harvard somewhere, na? So the entire process is dialoguing and respecting each other's capabilities and abilities and evolving what is meaningful. And I don't know, I've had a lot of space given to me, a lot of trust. And most of the programs I do are long-term. Now, 1 week with, I've actually done 15-day programs with top management teams to help them change the way they think, their mental model, the way they feel. So some of these transformation things are deep, and all that I'm doing is ask them to trust themselves. Asking them to listen carefully without filters. Yeah, don't interpret. Don't bring in frames that are foreign to you. Yeah. And I don't know, TCS now I've been working for what, 14, 15 years. Right. So they've given me space. They trust what I do. They know I talk to them about Mahabharata as much as I talk to anybody about Mahabharata and so on. So that's it. And I'm not saying East versus West, Rohit. Okay. I'm not saying East versus West. There are things to learn from there. I'm an engineer myself, and I think I was a good engineer. Yeah. So I'm not saying East versus West, but there is something special about us which has to be respected. You can't sit in India with envy of the West and hope to grow. You can't sit in India with envy of China and hope to grow.
Great. Excellent. Raghu, you mentioned this a bit. What I heard is this leadership program that you do with TCS is one of the largest ones, the longest standing programs in India, leadership development programs in India. Could you talk
I think so.
for 2 minutes about that and what exactly is it and how does it work?
Yeah.
What impact has it created?
See, I started working with TCS in '99. Yeah, we did a study of the culture, help the top management team write scenarios for the future and things like that. And then I did some work with their HR, redefining goal setting processes, number of things we did. And then we ran a very successful program called Propel for 3-4 years. How do you get people who are the first time leaders to really look at problem solving, look at creating culture, because they impact culture heavily, right? And then around 99 to 2006 or so, they were going to verticalize. So I had a dialogue. I mean, I was invited to have a dialogue saying, how do we now develop leaders for the future? So I developed a whole program which was fundamentally based on the Mahabharata characters and these 5 types of leadership. We had a long dialogue with Chandra, Ramadurai, Mahalingam, and all these people who said, yeah, please go and develop something like this. Right? The book Leadership Dharma is actually based a lot on the work that I did in TCS. Right? So we then developed a 6-day program, which looks at, which brings in a lot of elements of theater. Yeah, you can't talk about behavior and change behavior. You have to act, you have to do, you have to experience how feelings happen inside you. Right? So we work with that. We work with theater, we work with ideas from dance, we work with ideas from yoga. We start the day with some yoga practice, emphasize listening, emphasize how to talk to each other and so on, right? And the fundamental focus is, how do I touch the archetypal energy in me? How do I understand my aspirations for being the best that I can be? How do I work towards this? How do I understand these 5 types of power? How do I know how to work appropriately with each type of power? Right? How do I get into what I'm calling the Arjuna position and look at the whole system and ask questions like, is this the right business we're in? How will I design my business, and so on? Yeah. And we also introduce different ideas of looking at an organization, not necessarily hierarchical. Yeah. And interesting thing is, most IT companies actually work in a non-hierarchical way. But for some reason, they think they're still hierarchies. I've never understood this, because they're all small teams, they're craft teams working together, right? So you help them to bust some of these myths for themselves, and things work very well. Yeah. Recently, because we were crossing 1,500 people, 75 sessions over the last so many years, TCS, set out a thing saying, can we have some feedback? What was really, really interesting is many of the people who came for the first few programs are all in very senior places. And they wrote back quoting specific exercises and specific insights that had helped them through their life. Okay, so this is 10 years after a program types. Right, so they quoted, are you still doing this? And this is great. This is what happened to me. And that was just fantastic to read. This is not saying I had a great time, no? They were able to actually quote the specific insight in that specific exercise that we asked them to do. That was really, really something. And it's carrying on, yeah? So 1,500, 1,800 people we've covered in that. Now this year, we're going to be doing 4,000 people at a junior level over the web. Same program, slightly simplified. Instead of 6 days, we're putting them to the 4-day kind of thing. So we're going to be covering almost 5,000 people in that. And another, 800 people at the senior management. So I guess it can be one of the most successful leadership programs going, right?
Wonderful. Yeah. So Raghu,
I have one question. Fun, Rohit.
Yeah.
It's great fun. We have
yes,
fun.
I
That's
can
why
imagine
we're able
that.
to run it. Yeah, that's why otherwise we can't do 80 editions of it. If we guys don't have fun every time we run it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So Raghu, I have an associated question with that, and then we'll open it up for questions. So, this came when you were talking about how memorable it is. A few years back, from an HR role, I moved into a sales role, and I was having a tough time doing that. And my sense of myself was, I'm not cut out for sales. How will I do this, and so on. And I had one conversation with Ganesh, in which he talked about the story between Arjuna and his Sarathi versus Karna and his Sarathi. And he said, both these are in your mind. So are you being Arjuna and listening to your inner Krishna, or are you being Karna and listening to your inner Shalya?
Good question.
So that was so powerful that it actually turned around the entire situation. And I actually did very well in sales, won an award globally, and so on. So
brilliant.
how is it that is so powerful? And maybe that Gyan, that was given to me elsewhere as well, but this made a difference. And I'll just add on to that. An associated one is, I just did my Pandava profile. And then when I was debriefing that, I actually had tears in my eyes. And I never imagined that doing a psychometric, I'll have tears in my eyes. So why is that? What is the difference? What makes it so different?
See, 2-3 things, Rohit. I'm speculating because one is, a lot, when I use the word Karna, I don't have to explain the whole behavioral pattern, right? There are some very interesting things about the Mahabharata. There's one, the pioneer, the first psychoanalyst in India, Girindra Shekhar Bose. Yeah, brilliant man. What he writes about the Mahabharata is that it's a compendium of the most well-written case studies of psychological issues. Yeah, so for every dilemma that you face in life, there's a story in the Mahabharata, if you know this Mahabharata well, right? And most of us, luckily, haven't yet forgotten these stories, right? So when you say the dialogue between Karna and Shalya, most people who are listening will know what you're talking about and how deeply hurtful that was. See, what does he do in that? He hurts the pride of Karna, right? He tells him, you're a Sutaputra. What happens to Krishna-Arjuna dialogue? He says, you're a great guy, yaar. You're son of Pritha, you're this, get up, let's fight. And things like that, right? So when I just use these terms, Shalya Karna dialogue or this dialogue, you awaken inside you a whole host of cultural memories, right? And a lot of things will awaken in you, insights will come and so on. If I have to explain this in longhand to you, it'll take a long time, right? So that cultural capital we cannot lose, right? It's not the same as saying, you know what, there was another similar discussion between Hercules and somebody. It won't make sense to you, no?
Yeah. So
that's where it comes from. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Yeah. And the Pandava profile, I think you should explain that it's a pattern that we're talking about. You're not a, X or Y or Z, you're a pattern of these 5 types of power. So knowing what you're respecting, what you're holding up, what you're aspiring for, gives you a tremendous insight into how you can develop. You were asking another question?
Yeah. So an associated one, Raghu, and this is the disturbing part, where you said that even during the Kudam exam, the engineer example, that they were not schooled in Western education. So what is the hope for us who have completely lost the Indian way of looking at it, or
haven't completely lost it, Rohit. I don't think we have completely lost it as yet.
Okay, good. So it's not
because
as
in most places, no, it's not that hopeless. We just right now we're screwing ourselves badly to make it appear as though we conform to the West. Hopefully, we stop doing that soon because it's a high price that we're paying for it, right? But if the cultural memory goes away, we've lost something heavily because we cannot gain a 5,000-year cultural memory by just throwing this out, right? It's a huge resource. Okay, just because people call it names, you can't throw it out. Okay, and people who are calling it names for very vested interests. They're not doing it because they love India. They're doing it for other reasons, and many of them are colonizing reasons, right? So I don't think it's that hopeless. Second is we've run this program a number of ways. Now, without talking about these 5 heroes, we introduce it as propensity 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right? Very soon, somebody will say, this is Bhima, this is Arjuna, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so. Yeah. So long as this is not lost and Marvel Comics type of idea of these heroes doesn't take over, there is a lot of hope. Because you have to remember one more thing. There is nobody who's painted as black and white in all of this. Yeah, Duryodhana is not painted black. He's screwing up in this one relationship. But if you read the Mahabharata, he is a good king. There are many areas where he's a good person. This is extremely important because the moment you start painting people black and white, you get into this pernicious thing of othering. Yeah, if you're different from me, you're another. And if you're another, I can kill you. Right? This is not Indian culture, but it is creeping in. Right? And people are talking about polarizing without understanding what the hell polarizing is all about. because the Indian mind is not an othering mind. It is being pushed into certain things.
Rohit, I think we should open it up to...
Yes, let's open it up to questions. I love this conversation, but we open it up to questions. Yeah. Prerna had one question, saying you talk of the Pandava, it's all male. What about the feminine energy? What about feminine?
Good question. Good question. Yeah. Can I see Prerna's face so I know what happens when I'm speaking to her?
Prerna, could we request you to be on video?
Yes. Yeah, hi. Yeah. Two things, Prerna. One, when you go into the archetypal energy, there's no male and female. Okay, archetypal energies don't have gender. Yeah, that is one. Okay, and if you understand these 5 powers, which is what they represent, Bhima is actually a feminine power. Nakula is a feminine power. Yudhishthira is a male power. Sahadeva is a male power. And Arjuna is male-female. Right? 1 year of Ajnatavas, he goes and discovers his femininity. Yeah?
Okay.
So if you understand the Mahabharata carefully, it is not gender biased in that sense. Right? But try telling it to a liberal leftist, nah?
Yeah, no, and I also had a related question about, the pattern that you said, Nakul and Sachdev. What I also heard was that it's a pattern. It's not that you are one
Correct.
or the other. It is about
Correct.
maybe
You have all 5.
All 5.
Yes, you have all 5 in you, and Draupadi is just a symbol of Prakriti. Yeah, and therefore she integrates all 5 powers. Yeah, and people forget she was in charge of the Khajana. She was the finance minister for the Pandavas.
Very, very interesting.
Right?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And she was always consulted. In every decision they made, she was always consulted. She had a lot of power. Yeah, remember, she made Bhima go all over the place to get her one little flower, no?
Thank you.
There are lots of questions on chat. If you can come up and ask, it will be great.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Is it okay if I go ahead and ask a question, please?
Please.
Thank you. So thank you very much for all the insights. So I, in fact, posted my question on the chat as well. So my son is about 7.5 years old. So would you like to recommend some books which are probably based on the learnings of Mahabharata? I know these are children who are going to grow up and become the future of the nation and probable leaders of different organizations. So he does read a lot of mythology, but anything on the lines that we've been talking about? Thank you.
See, Amar Chitra Katha is not bad. It's not great. It's not bad. It's a comic, so it's a nice place to start. Yeah. The simplest book that I've come across is Kamala Subramaniam's book on Mahabharata. Yeah, it is not pretentious. It tells you the story nicely. It's written in good English and so on. Yeah, that's the best book I know. Right? Don't read Devdutt Patnaik. He was good once upon a time, but he is distorting the reality. And there's too much of his opinion. So if you know the stuff properly, it's interesting to read him and argue in your mind with what he's saying. But if you don't know enough, it's not a great book to read. Though he wasn't yet this way when he wrote the first Mahabharata book. No? When he was still okay. But yeah, just tell them stories. Yeah, there are so many beautiful stories in every tradition about these guys. Nah?
No, I do that.
Just tell them stories. Yeah, just tell them
Thank you very
stories.
much.
That's it. Yeah, and don't try and tell them morals. Yeah. Aesop's fables, according to Joseph Campbell, were all taken from India. The only problem is they added a bloody moral at the end of the story. Yeah, read Panchatantra stories out to your kid. They're brilliant stuff.
Mr. Raghu, I have one question. I want to know more about Duryodhana, about his good things. You said no, he was a good king because you always read about his bad things. Can you just few lines? What was his good qualities?
What was his qualities? Yeah, he remember his parents didn't. I'd like to see the person I'm talking to. Yeah.
Sir,
Otherwise, it's like a ghostly voice coming from somewhere. I don't know what's happening.
My video
Yeah,
is
and
not supporting.
if I crack a joke and I don't see your face, I'm very worried that you don't
Sorry,
understand.
sir, my
what I'm
video
saying.
is not supporting my laptop today. Some technical problem.
Terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, first of all, yeah, nobody names their son Duryodhana and Dushasana, no?
Yes.
Yeah, his name was Suyodhan and Sushasan. Okay? And he's a sweet guy. He's exactly like Bhima. He loves food, he loves this, he loves to play. That's how his character is.
Okay.
Okay? But at some point of time, he is caught with envy. Yeah, so even the story says this, that at this point of time, envy entered his heart and Suyodhan became Duryodhan.
Okay. Very interesting.
So whenever there are situations where this part of him is not triggered, he's a nice guy. So he rules his country fairly well and all of that. Except he loses his head every now and again. Yeah, that's why I said development cannot happen through envy. It can only happen through honestly looking at what's going on and going into an exile once in a while, sitting back, asking yourself, what did I really do? And so on. If you don't know how to recognize when you've goofed up and go back and consult your own heart, you cannot develop. And that's all that the Pandavas do different from the Kauravas.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Every time they screw up badly, they go on an exile.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Raghu, I have a question.
Raghu, I have also a question. This is Sushil. Oh, okay, Jay, go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, Raghu. It's been absolutely amazing and fascinating to listen to you. I've never heard a take on Indian mythology and culture like this. And
Purana, not mythology, Joy.
I stand corrected.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I'm pushing this Purana word. You finish your question. Yeah.
So, interesting part is that while we are talking about books and Mahabharata and Ramayana to some extent, and the interesting part is that there is a lot of literature available, and there are a lot of series that we've also seen. The problem is that a lot of these books also somehow I feel deal in a very black and white manner about these characters.
Correct.
So like
colonized minds, Joy.
Correct. So how does one also come across the right kind of literature which are more objective and not so much into black and white? Because I say so because you're not the first person I've imbibed this from. While I was growing up and in our families, our grandmothers and whoever, they used to be talking about how Ravana was not all that bad, how Duryodhan had his own qualities. So it has been, we have ingrained it into our system. But the generation is not subject to those kind of books. So even if I buy books or comics, how does one think just move away from black and white, and where does one go to procure such literature?
See, why I push this thing of mythology is the Indian word is Itihasa Purana. Okay, Itihasa means, wow, is this the way things were? If I have to give you a nice English translation, right? It's not history. There is no attempt to write exactly what was what. There are other books that have written exactly what is what. There is a whole treatise which talks about which king came when and all this kind of historical thing. These books are not meant for that. These books, and the word Purana, one of the meanings of the word Purana is Pura api Navam. Pura means ancient and Navam means nascent. Now, how can a story be old, ancient, and nascent? Right? It becomes old and nascent because the story is happening in your heart and your mind now as you read it. Okay? So if you look at it like that, yeah, and I told you what Girindra Shekhar Bose had said, na? These are all case studies, right? Duryodhana is inside you, Karna is inside you, every character there is inside you. They're all different aspects of human possibilities, right? So the Mahabharata does not write about anything other than a human dilemma, a series of human dilemmas, right? So when you meet a human dilemma and you let the Bhima side of you come out, right? You'll be in love. You'll do things out of passion, right? You'll be a romantic. The same archetypal energy is Duryodhana. He is just as romantic, just as passionate, except that this idiot has got caught with envy. Now, my power can get caught with beauty or with envy. They're both parts of me. Every character in the Ramayana or the Mahabharata is just another aspect of you. Okay? Now, the stories are so beautifully nuanced. You don't tell a child all this, no?
Right.
But you know the story. So now when I tell you this, as an adult, can you re-look at the story from this frame and this lens?
Absolutely.
The whole story will become very different. Right? And this is not my concoction, Joy. One of the people who was very concerned about the way Mahabharata and Ramayana were being interpreted by the Orientalists is a very important person called Sutankar. Right? He wrote a 30-40 page paper where he said, this is where the Orientalists are going wrong. Yeah. So he says that the Mahabharata can be looked at 3 levels. That there are some historical facts because the Mahabharata describes the land beautifully, describes how things were happening in great detail. So you have some, you can put a historical lens and look at it. He said, then it becomes a stupid story between 2 halves of a family. How is it useful to me? That's what people are trying to reduce it to. Right? He says the second level is many people look at it as a moral story. And he says that is not useful either because you're trying to use today's brain and imposing today's idea on a 5,000-year-old story. How can you do that? So you'll ask a stupid question. How can Draupadi have 5 husbands? Or whatever, right? Like this whole episode, that this guy asked them to take off their upper garments and all that. At that time, if you were not, part of the elite, you couldn't wear upper garments. So everybody took off their upper garments, damn it, not just Draupadi. All the 5 guys had to take it off as a sign of their dasya. So these are interpreted stupidly by people who are using a wrong lens. Then he says, look at it as a Purana, where it is a drama of the human mind. And then it lights up in a completely different way. It's a priceless compendium of case studies. Yeah, every psychological issue you can think of is reflected in that book.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's it, man. That's all you need now. You've got the key. Look at it from here. All Indian stories are like this. Okay. Krishna, the word Krishna, when you're a kid, is this guy who loves butter. When you're an adolescent, he's the guy who's playing around with all the people you wish to play around with. Right? When he's a youth, he's this Malyuddha, he's this warrior who can, wrestle and so on. When he's older, he becomes a wise man. And finally, you understand that Krishna simply means the color of the indigo sky when there's no moon. Okay? And the Devi is the one with the body of Laksha Koti Brahmandas. So which Krishna do you want to hold on to? Yeah, if you want to throw shit on India, you hold on to one idea of Krishna and interpret it the way you want to and say whatever you want to say. But if you want to grow up as a human being, if you want to develop, grow to understand what it means to have this space inside you, yeah, which can hold a Laksha Koti Brahmandas in your mind. Grow into that, man, and that is Krishna.
Totally autonomous. And authentic.
So I'll meet you on the other side of Cosmos once you get there.
Thank you,
Ravi. There's one question. After you, Soumya. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, Soumya.
This is Sushil Barpur. Actually, Soumya is my daughter's name.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm Sushil.
Sushil,
Raghu,
hi.
Yeah. Raghu, a wonderful perspective you have given. And in fact, one thing is coming in my mind. There are nowadays a lot of OD intervention which are now converted into the L&D intervention. People are talking about sending the top managers to the Harvard University or ESEED or this kind of big institution, isn't it? Now with these kind of people, means to the management, when we propose that there is a lot of wisdom is there in the Indian history, or you can say Indian Puranas. So can we create some kind of drama or a theater kind of thing for our top management people, but unable to sell this concept to them? They are more interested in those foreign certificates.
No. There are two things here. Sushil. See, one is when people go to INSEAD and all these places, the networking that happens is much more important than the learning.
Okay.
Right? Because I've also taught in some INSEAD programs and all that in IIM Bangalore. You have a cross section of people who are heads of Samsung this and who are heads of that all over the world coming for these programs. So you're not paying this guy to learn things so much as to meet people he can never ever meet in any other context and create friendships and bonds that are very important for business. That's one half of it, right? Now, unless you introduce these kinds of understanding of power and all that at a lower level in the organization first, and people see the efficacy of it, you cannot just suddenly pop it up to the top management.
Right.
Okay.
Understood.
So
Understood.
I'll just reflect to you a very important discussion I had with the MD of one of the organizations I was working with. Right. They would call these foreign consultants, they would do some things and come back, and then they would, I'd have a conversation with the family and so on. So I asked them once, I said, you're paying some 10, 15 times what you pay me to these guys. Yeah. And then we are discussing, we're coming up with solutions. Why are you doing this? So he said, you know what, Raghu, if I have to trust you, I have to trust myself. Yeah. If these guys say something and I argue with them and I come up with a solution, I feel much more secure. Right? This organization rarely implemented what the foreign guys were saying. Right? He had this person I was talking to had solid fights with them, put up his data, whatever it was. But he said they have a certain rigor in the way they bring up data, they do this, they do that, which I cannot do. I don't have that bandwidth. I don't have the depth of research. So at quantitative analysis, they are very good and they've got tons of quantitative data. Right. Now, IIMs and the ISBs and all of these people can replicate this data gathering if they wish to. If they really put their minds to it and focus on Indian data and world data from Indian eyes, they can create this kind of ground. Right? We haven't. Yeah. So the kind of thing we are talking about, if you're interested, you ought to introduce it at junior management and things like that and build it up. Okay. Because then, as far as the management is concerned, the risk is not very high.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But if you're interested, I'm working with people like Prasad Kaipa and all of them, and we can put together something if you're really interested.
I'm really interested, Raghu, and interested to know that after the session, how to approach you. Because if you remember that in the month of
Vivek.
Yeah, because last year in this Asian Coaching Conference, correct, you were also there.
Correct.
And that time I have purchased this book of this leadership dharma from there itself.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, Raghu. So I will get connected with Vivek. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Rohit, hey, I got a sign off soon. Yeah, another 5 minutes. I have another call.
So we have 9 p.m. on dot. I think we can complete now, Vivek. Is that fine?
It's good. Yeah, it's great. I had one question, Raghu, and I'm going to ask you to just look at a 1 minute kind of a thing. And I think it's important to look at that. Sure. Dharmesh, you had a question. I think it needed a little clarification. Dharmesh, yes. Are you there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, if you can, what you put on the chat, and if you can.
And if you could come on video.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Raghu. Raghu, earlier in this session, you created the importance of Indic values by actually denouncing the Western values.
Did I denounce the Western values? I only denounced a colonized mind.
The colonized mind, which said that Western values are to be looked at, and so my apology.
Yeah, if you're an American, you deal with an American mind. You keep your American mind and see how to develop the American mind. If you're an Indian, don't be envious of the American mind. Discover what it means to be an Indian mind and develop that.
Yeah. So my question really was that when we have these differing values, shouldn't we look at, should envy be combated with shaming the others, or rather trying to kind of look at it with much more compassion? I know you said earlier it's not about Indic values versus Western values, and I understand that and I really appreciate it, but I'm getting a little confused in terms of how do you uphold it and yet uphold saying that yes, whatever the other values are correct with their own perspective.
That's what I've been saying. Nah? I never said anything about shaming the other. I'm saying shaming yourself. The price we are paying is we are holding ourselves in shame. Why? Why hold somebody else in envy and yourself in shame and then say, I must develop like that guy? The only way that's possible is if you lobotomize your brain and put an American brain in your head.
Okay, got it.
Maybe you can do that in a few years, put a chip in your head and,
They're already doing
I don't
it.
know.
Elon Musk is
but
doing
right
it.
now, we're stuck with our brains and our hearts and our culture and everything. So respect it.
Yeah.
And remember that, there are some people who have done some studies about these things, and we have been very rich, very successful in business for a very long time. It's only in the last couple of 100 years we've not been very successful. Even that is because things have been stolen from us. Yeah, somebody has written $45 trillion. That's a hell of a lot of money. All that money was made in India, except that it went to somebody else's coffers. So we're not duffers at all by any stretch of imagination.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And we know business. So can we respect that and not take this, last 150, 200 years of a blip and the last 70 years of not knowing how to respect ourselves too seriously?
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's all the question.
So great. Thanks, Raghu. Last question. In our Puranas, is there an equivalent?
Oops.
Is there an equivalent of a group photo? Because we're going to take that right now. Could
Okay.
Is there something equivalent of that? It was a rhetorical one. But yeah, could we have everyone on video, please? As many of us as possible. Let's have a quick group picture. Yeah, it'd be lovely to have everyone. Okay, as they say in Delhi, say cheese pakoda. Don't say cheese. So say cheese pakoda. Yeah,
Okay.
Done. Great. Thank you. Thanks a
Great.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raghu. Thanks, Vivek.
Thanks, Rohit. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks. It was a wonderful
Hopefully,
session.
it was meaningful to people.
Yeah, very.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Raghu.
Thanks.
Thanks, Vivek. Thanks, Ganesh.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you, Raghu.
We'll continue the conversation on WhatsApp.
Thanks, Rohit.
Thank you. Thanks, Falguni.